What's going on, everybody? It's Joel here, and today we're going to be doing the review of the New Balance Minimus TR2s. So this year we have the Minimus TR2s. They're keeping the naming scheme from the last Minimus, but I think that's pretty much all that's the same from the last shoe to this shoe. There are some similarities, but to me it seems like this is built on completely new tooling. So let's talk about the construction. And there's kind of a lot going on with this year's Minimus. It's kind of hard to explain the design that they were trying to go with, but in pictures, it is not a very pretty shoe. In real life, I think it looks a little bit better, or you kind of understand why things are the way that they are with the shoe. But no matter how you cut it, it looks like there's a lot going on with this shoe. So first off, on top of the toe box, there is a dual layer mesh, and it's got a little bit of stretch to it. It's very comfortable, flexible. I've never had any issues with hot spots or breathability with the shoe. And that's surprising considering that there's like seams pretty much all over this shoe. The next material up is this more heavy duty mesh that goes around the front part of the ankle collar and around the eye stays, and then also around the lateral and medial sides or rim of the shoe. On top of that, at the toe box, there are some overlays to give you some structure, but it's cut out at the very front part of the shoe where the outsole rises up and creates a toe bumper for the shoe. That's a more taut material. It doesn't have as much stretch as the toe box does, but it's still very flexible. Now, looking at the lacing system on this shoe, we have two like opposing panels that work similar to how the straps on an Olympic weightlifting shoe would. So you have one that goes over the metatarsals on the lateral side and goes more over the middle part of your foot on the medial side, and the lacing goes through that, so it cinches together and basically holds your foot in place. Now, they're not very flexible at all in terms of like stretch, but they do bend with your foot very well, and they actually produce a good amount of structure at that part of the shoe. You don't really ever feel like your foot's bleeding over or rolling inwards with these shoes, and I really liked that design aspect of this shoe. The rest of the lacing goes through the tongue and some webbed loops on the sides of the shoe, and all in all, I thought that you could get a really secure fit with these shoes, but the tongue on the shoe is pretty bad. It's like a piece of neoprene. It's stretchy, and when you put your foot into it, like it wants to fold over. It's not gusseted on the side. On the flip side, it's like easy to adjust back to where you need it to be because it's so like stretchy and whatnot, but just keep that in mind that you will have to go back and always kind of adjust the tongue based off the way that you put your foot into the shoe. Now, taking a look at the back part of the shoe, we have a very cushioned plush area around the heel, and the fit around the ankle in the shoe in general is just a little bit on the lower side. It feels a little thin, like plenty of mobility. So some people are gonna like that. Some people might not like that if you liked a little bit more ankle support. The shoe doesn't have a ton of ankle support, but I thought the fit around the heel was very, very comfortable. Now, it does have a heel collar that is external, and it's kind of like this band that's the same material as the loops on the lacing system, but there's also like a material heel counter inside at the back part. It seems to be like there's like a break in the middle, because on my left shoe, I actually bent one of the sides down. You can see this like divot. I bent that side down, just kind of lazily putting my foot inside the shoe, and it's really bent. Like I could feel it from the inside part of the shoe, so that's a little distracting, and it's just worth noting that whenever you put your feet into these shoes, make sure that you lace them all the way up so that you don't crush this part of the shoe, because it will bend and it doesn't want to relax itself afterwards. Now, at the very, very back part of the shoe, we have a heel clip that is made out of some kind of TPU plastic material, but it's got like a rubberized feel to it, and I actually noticed that making my feet drag a little bit up the wall when I was doing my handstand push-ups, it's not something that's going to stop you from doing handstand push-ups, but it's worth noting that you probably will notice that. Now, taking a look at the midsole of the shoe, we've got exposed midsole on the sides. This is a fuel cell midsole, so we have a TPU and EVA blend, and it's more on the dense and responsive side, but it is also very comfortable. I think it absorbs impact well. It's never muddy. It's good actually for running. The stack height on the shoe is indeed on the lower side. So these shoes are very low to the ground. There's not a ton of cushioning, but the cushioning that's there works well. It does have a 4mm drop. Another thing worth noting is that these have a sewn-in insole and it has turn-down stitching. These shoes are made to be comfortably worn without socks. You can wear them with socks. I prefer to wear them without socks. But just keep in mind that if you're somebody that has custom fit orthotics and you need to use those with your shoes, you might need to size up because they're going to take up excess space inside of the shoe. Now, taking a look at the outsole, we have a few different things going on here. We've got a herringbone design at the forefoot, and then you have a break over by the metatarsals, and then right past that, you have a more lugged midfoot wrap, and that goes up the sides of the shoe to produce some kind of sidewall to give you more structure in that area, but also give you protection and traction for when you're climbing up the rope. When I was doing rope climbs in these shoes, I thought that the grip was pretty good. They stayed on your feet very well, but the one caveat to all of that is that the contact patch is very small and you have to be pretty accurate when jumping and grabbing onto the rope with your feet. So it might take a little bit of practice. In one workout, by the end of the workout, I was pretty accurate at doing it, but it's not as easy to get contact with the middle part of the shoe as it is on other shoes. Another thing that's a little bit worrisome to me is the exposed midsole. And I think that if you catch the rope wrong or coming down wrong, that will eventually burn over time. Similar to the case of the Metcon 9s where there's like exposed midsole at the bottom part of the shoe, but only time will tell. Otherwise, the durability looks pretty good to me. Now, taking a look at the heel of the shoe, we have that herringbone pattern as well. And I don't really notice too much of a difference in terms of the way that the gum rubber feels and the tinted rubber feels. So I would assume that the material is the same and the grip feels just about the same to me as well. Now, when taking a look at the profile of the shoe, you'll notice that it is not exactly flat like a minimal shoe or barefoot shoe would typically be. That initially was pretty alarming to me because of issues that I've had in the past with shoes that have an aggressive toe spring and getting pitched forward from that. But the more I used these shoes, the more it became not really a big deal to me. I found that because of the way that they're designed and the flexibility and also the heel to toe drop, mitigating that was not that hard to do when you're aware that it might be a problem. So if you're just able to grab down a little bit more with your toes and then rock back onto your heel, I thought that the toe spring was not really a big deal. One thing that these shoes do extremely well is that they're very lightweight. I got a men's size 10.5 in at 9.5 ounces. Okay, so when going to size your Minimus TRs, you have a couple different options. You have the normal width, and then you have the extra wide, which is the 2E version. I opted for the 10.5 normal width, and I find that they fit me pretty much right on the money if I'm not wearing socks. If I'm wearing socks, then they become a snug fit. It's not uncomfortable. I can for sure wear them, but it is my preference to wear the 10.5s without socks. I don't wear orthotics or anything like that, so it's just my foot inside of the shoe, and it's like right on the money. Now, I am not somebody that has a wide foot at all, and I do not consider the normal ones to be very wide at all, nor do I want to say that they have a very anatomical toe box. It actually comes to a pretty good point right there. I think the last that they're using is like a curved last, and you can kind of see it in the way that the shoe is shaped. So if you're somebody that has an idea that you have somewhat wide feet, you are 100% going to want to get the wide versions of these shoes. The normal ones are not wide at all, despite being a minimal or like gateway barefoot shoe. But I think for just about everybody else, the normal versions will fit just fine if you have narrow feet. But if you're somebody that has like normal feet, like myself, I would consider myself to have normal feet, then I think the Minimus TRs are gonna fit well in the just normal models. Also consider that you do not have the option to remove the insole. So if you're somebody that uses insoles inside of your shoes and you want to put one in, you're probably also going to need to size half up to accommodate the extra space that that insole is going to take. So when it comes to running in these, I thought they did actually pretty good. I think that the cushioning that they're using, the fuel cell cushioning, is very comfortable underfoot. There's not a ton of it. So if you're somebody that needs a lot of cushioning in your shoes when you're doing your runs, then this is not going to be the shoe for you. But if you're somebody that's like a typical CrossFitter or used to wearing training shoes, I think this is going to be actually really good for running. It's mainly really good for running because they're so lightweight and flexible, and then the cushioning that it does have, while minimal, works very well. So if you still run like an elephant, these are not going to be comfortable for you. But if you're a little bit better on your feet about like running more towards the midfoot, then I think that running in these is actually going to be pretty pleasant. I would not have any issues taking these up to a run for maybe like 2K, 3K, a little over a mile. I think that these would do just fine. Obviously, they're still training shoes and they're not meant for any kind of distance running. But for the runs that you would normally find in a CrossFit workout, even if you're somebody that just is wearing these to go on the treadmill, I think that these are going to be fine. And that pretty much translates on over to if you're doing like your body weight plyometric movements. Like if you're doing burpees, these stay very comfortable because of just how flexible they are. They move with your feet very well. They're super breathable. The lining inside is very comfortable if you're wearing them barefoot. And if you're using these for like box jumps or something like that, the grip is very good. They're very responsive. Getting onto the box, getting off of the box, and then getting back onto the box is a fairly comfortable ordeal. It never feels like these weigh your feet down at all. And when it comes to like agility stuff, I think that that's where the Minimus shine the most. Now, when we're talking about lifting, I thought that these were also pretty good. Like I said before, the toe spring angle to me was something that I was initially a little bit put off by, but the more I actually use these shoes for lifts, the less of a concern that was to me. Now, I'm not gonna say that these will never pitch you forward, because there have been situations where I've noticed myself rocking more onto my toes, and that was somewhat present while I was doing like touch and go deadlifts. And I thought that while these were low to the ground, they weren't still my favorite deadlifting shoes because of that toe spring angle. If you're doing like a single lift at a time, then it's probably not going to be that bad. Or if you're doing like a drop and reset deadlift, then it's probably not going to be an issue. But if you're doing touch and go deadlifts, then that might present itself. Now, when I was doing my Olympic weightlifting movements, I was doing singles and I didn't notice any kind of pitch. The response on these shoes was excellent. The grip is very, very good. If you can land in the right spot every single time, which is probably not gonna happen, but when you do, these shoes feel very, very stable. Now, when it came to barbell cycling, I felt like the toe spring kind of came into play there more than just doing singles. So if you're holding onto the barbell, you have to make sure that you are conscious about bringing it back to you, turning on your lats so that these don't rock you forward when you're returning the bar back down to the ground. Another issue was when I was doing like fast singles, I was kind of jumping and then landing in just like random spots all over the place. So my footing wasn't sure every single time when I was trying to do like pretty fast singles at a moderate weight, not a lightweight, not a heavyweight, but like a moderate weight. With slow movements like squats, I never noticed any issues in terms of stability. Obviously, you can get set up a little bit better when you're taking the bar off the rack, and the midsole never felt like it was mushy or got in the way. It's still very low to the ground, and I thought that responsiveness was generally pretty good on these shoes. I never went to like a 1 rep max in these, but I don't think that I would have any issues going that heavy in the Minimus TR2s because of the lower stack height and ability to get good ground tact with my feet. So the Minimus TRs retail for $120. That's on the lower end of the spectrum when it comes to training shoes. While the shoe is not going to be for everybody, for sure, and that's immediately apparent in the way that the shoes look. If you don't like the design, then you're not gonna like these shoes. Like getting them in real life, I don't think it matters how functional the design or the shoes are. There's no way to cut it. They're just not very good looking shoes. But if you're somebody that doesn't really care, you care more about the function than the form of a shoe, then I think there's a lot to really like about the Minimus. When it comes to like being an end-all, be-all like CrossFit shoe, there are some weaknesses in that, yeah, the toe spring can potentially pitch you forward for certain things like barbell cycling, but as long as you're just aware of it and you know that it can happen, then you can mitigate the issue. It's not the best barbell cycling shoe, but it does pretty good for your Olympic weightlifting singles and your slower lifts. So admittedly, I did not want to like the Minimus TR2s because I thought that they were just not very good looking, but now that I have used them for a good amount of time, I think I've used these for actually like 2 months now, I am a big fan of these shoes. I like that they are not a full-on barefoot shoe. They're super flexible, they're very comfortable, and I don't mind beating them up because I don't think that they're very good looking. But to each their own, and if you have any questions about the Minimus TR2s, feel free to leave them in the comment section. And as always, guys, please hit that like button, subscribe, and thanks for watching.